All right, diaphragm pump. Extremely common. Extremely common in aviation. What did I like here? 2.6, 2.2. Try that. Extremely common. Common in general aviation. What did we classify it as? Classified as a variable displacement pump. It is engine driven, but consider it. Yes. Consider it a spring driven pump. Spring operated pump. As because the engine only resets the spring. Components. What does it have in there?
Diaphragm.
Uses 2 check valves. Right, a check valve is a one-way valve. Only lets the liquid go one way. So that is one allows fuel in and one allows fuel out. Allows fuel out. We have the diaphragms. How many?
Two.
Whoa!
Way.
You guys suck.
One main diaphragm.
A main diaphragm. Okay, what was the other one? Okay, an upper diaphragm or backup. Wow. I think I hit a button or something. An upper diaphragm. Okay, so what's the main diaphragm do?
Pumps.
Yeah, it does all the work. What's the upper diaphragm for?
To keep the fuel from going into the engine.
Okay, it's there in case the main diaphragm ruptures. So what happens if the main diaphragm ruptures?
Fuel leaks into the upper diaphragm and then is pumped overboard.
Okay, so it leaks up and the upper diaphragm continues to work, continues to make the pump operate, but you get a little bit of...
Little leak.
And where should that little leaky go?
Overboard.
Well, or you can make sure you spray it right onto the exhaust so that it burns off and you don't get fuel everywhere.
Fuel evaporation.
Yeah, no, that's a...
Give you some thrust.
Yeah. Chances of surviving that are not good. In fact, one of the last AOPA was that not I laughed. It's the other one. And there I was. Yeah, guy in his new to him Cirrus on his like second or third flight pulled the chute. So it's a good story, but basically,
I'll get there.
Yeah.
Only on this second, third one.
exhaust came apart,
Oh.
so started
Well, I
burning a
think you
hole
were-
through the
you were
plane.
telling us about,
Yeah.
yeah, you were telling us about that one. Okay.
There are 3 diaphragms: main, upper, and pulsator. Where does the pulsator diaphragm go? Did you guys fall asleep?
Yeah.
What's this one here?
That's your main.
Main.
What's this one?
Your upper.
This one right here.
Pulse.
Pulsator. So what's pulsator do?
Compensates for the push down.
Right? So when the spring pushes down on the main diaphragm and the fuel goes into that chamber,
Yeah.
it's actually the bottom of it, and it flexes a little bit.
Mm.
And then when the upper one goes up, this one pops up with it, puts a little bit of, just a little,
Yeah.
you know,
Hope-
help. Yep, that's the word I was looking for. And, oh, and then there it is.
That's really clever.
Yeah. All right, so we got those. What else is there's a heavy spring? It's a pretty healthy spring, and we have an arm driven on a cam or push rod plunger. So an arm driven by a cam and push rod. Operation. As the cam and plunger press arm down, spring is compressed and diaphragm is lifted up. Let me see. As the cam and plunger press down, spring is compressed and diaphragm is lifted up. Got it?
Yes.
So down, arm goes up, grabs the spring, lifts up the spring, pulls up the diaphragm. So as cam and plunger press arm down. So arm down, spring is compressed. Spring is compressed and diaphragm is lifted up. Is lifted up. This draws in fuel. This draws in fuel through the inlet check valve. Through the inlet check valve. If there is a demand, so if there's a demand, the spring presses down on the diaphragm, pushing fuel through the outlet check valve. If there is no demand, it's still going to push on the fuel, but nothing's leaving. So if there is demand, spring presses on fuel. I should put spring presses on fuel then if there is demand, but oh well. Spring presses. Presses down. Yeah, I'm going to do that. But
What?
just get rid of this right here. Spring presses down on diaphragm, because this is technically more correct. And if there is a demand, see how the difference is?
Yeah.
Is there's demand. Fuel will be pressed out of the outlet check valve. Much better. And if there is no demand, the spring remains compressed and the diaphragm remains up and no fuel is pumped out. So
When you say demand, in this case, you're kind of saying the lack of a restriction. Is that the same thing?
no, if there's a lack of restriction, there's massive demand.
Okay.
So if you have no demand, it's because for whatever reason there's always a demand. Even if you're an idle, there's the minute demand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if I pull the idle mixture back.
All the way lean.
All the way. It's not lean, it's idle mixture, all the way back, idle cutoff.
Oh.
Cut off.
Right.
So there is no fuel flow to the engine.
So there's no demand.
So there's no demand, but the propeller is going to spin for just a second or two more. Or if I'm in flight, and I did that in flight, I shut off the fuel going to the engine, but the air is still windmilling the propeller, so the fuel pump's still going. So there is no demand. So, but the spring keeps getting reset every time, and it tries to push the fuel, but it goes nowhere.
Do you hear anything with that? Do you hear like clicking or anything?
It's loud. There's no clicking. It's the pump's quiet.
Well, I was just thinking like if it's tapping on the spring, like
It
the
doesn't.
spring isn't ever resetting or.
Nah, you'd never hear that.
Not over
Made sense?
else.
Hopefully.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think what he's saying that in the picture it showed that coming off the spring
Yeah.
and
Yeah, in the video it showed it coming off of the spring. Like
Yeah.
It like the spring staying like this and the arm.
Yeah.
kind of smacking it.
It kind of would.
Yeah.
We're talking thousands, it's real small.
Well, but the arm continues to go up and down all the way, and the spring stays here.
Yeah.
So would you hear that? No, you wouldn't hear that. If there is no demand, why would there be no demand? In most normal circumstances, there is a demand. You're idling. I mean, how often do we turn off the fuel in an aircraft and just fly around, right? If it's a twin engine, you're going to feather it and shut the engine down anyway. If it's a single engine, then you're going to be going down pretty fast. If there is no demand, spring remains compressed. I don't know why does it.
What's going on?
uh-oh.
That is like it has something to do with these buttons on my pen. I keep touching. Apparently, spring remains compressed. Spring remains compressed. Diaphragm remains up. Diaphragm remains up. And no fuel is pumped out. All right, see F, upper diaphragm. What does that do again?
It's back open.
Okay. Keeps any fuel leaks. Any fuel leaks from main diaphragm. Leaks from main. Main diaphragm from leaking into crankcase. Acts as a backup diaphragm. CFG. What do we have here? We have the pulsator diaphragm. What does that do?
Fluxes.
Okay.
Down pulses.
Yeah, and what does it ultimately end up doing?
And smooths out the power pulses.
There we go. Evens out fuel pressure, evens out fuel pressure. Pulsations. Pulsations to prevent excessive wear to the servo, to the servo, fuel servo. And it's worth mentioning the drain fitting. What about the drain fitting?
Special.
Should be kept free, not go plug it.
Used to indicate a leaky main diaphragm. Used to indicate a leaky main diaphragm. Could add this. Must be plumbed overboard. Cool. Break time.